and welcome to my second blog post here on Little Guts. Today's blog post is going to be a foundational blog post. Today's blog post is called What is Gut Health Anyway? So a lot of times we've seen a lot of articles on Facebook, a lot of articles pop up in our news feed talking about gut health. And a lot of times I was one of these people. I didn't know what that actually meant. I thought my gut was just my stomach. Turns out it's a whole lot more than just my stomach. So I just wanted to lay that foundation for what the supplements are that I've used, what the science behind it is, and that way you can kind of understand why the supplements are so important and how they act on our brains and the brains of our children. So, like I said, my blog is about gut health, developmental delay, and early intervention. So we're going to cover gut health today and what exactly it is. Now, this is just a very general overview of gut health, just so you can kind of get the gist of how the mechanics work of it and what the interplay is between our gut and our brain and our immune system. So a lot of times you'll hear concepts such as the second brain or the gut-brain axis, and that refers to the concept of gut health. Our bodies are made up of trillions of bacteria. That's way more bacterial cells than actual human cells in our body. So it's kind of inevitable that these cells, these bacteria cells, are going to be responsible mostly for a whole host of different things in our body. So let's talk about your gut and just general stressors and general well-being. So when our body and our guts come in contact with stressors, the nerves in our gut send signals to our brain about those stressors, and vice versa. So your brain does the same thing with your gut. So think of your brain and your gut as kind of a two-way street as far as communication. There's also a very important nerve called the vagus nerve, which we will probably discuss later on, but not for today's general gut health principles. So, and also 90% of our serotonin, which is a mood or emotion hormone, is produced in our gut. This is a really emerging field for mental health as well. A lot of people think that the future of mental health and mental illness research lies within the gut. A lot of the research that's been done in the past years has just been to kind of establish that there's actually a brain-gut connection. So now that they've established that and they know some of the pathways, but still not all, with the brain communicating with the gut, there's going to be a lot more research focused on actually healing things like mental illness, developmental delay, and autism through gut health. Our guts are also an immune system powerhouse. So when you think gut, you think stomach. But when we talk about gut health, it's so much more than your stomach. It's actually mostly in your intestines that we're talking about. But anyway, let's start with your stomach. So as far as your stomach's purpose within this whole gut health discussion, your stomach actually sterilizes the food you eat and protects you from foodborne illness, generally, of course. So the acids in your stomach work to kill pathogens already starting in your stomach to avoid you getting sick. Obviously, it doesn't work 100% of the time. Some pathogens can't be killed by your acids in your stomach. But that's the first line of defense that your body has as far as an immune response that stems from your gut. So let's talk about the real powerhouse in this equation, and that's your small intestine. Our small intestines have more than just a function of absorbing all the nutrients from our foods. So the small intestine has a permeable layer between it and the rest of our bodies. That means that selectively things can go from inside our small intestine out into our bodies. The small intestines, that permeable layer, is lined with clusters and nodules called Peyer's patches. These patches have oval clusters of lymphoid tissue, which is immune tissue basically. And the surface area of these cells, these lymphoid and immune cells within our small intestine, the surface area is anywhere from 600 to 900 square feet. That is a lot of freaking immune tissue. So like I was saying about this permeable layer in our small intestine, permeable meaning things can cross from inside the small intestine out into the rest of your body. Among other things that can do that are pathogens and illness. So that's one way that we get sick. Luckily, we have another layer of defense in our small intestine. We have another layer of cells called Paneth cells, and these cells actually secrete an antibacterial substance that works to kill pathogens within our small intestine to not allow them to permeate that membrane and get into our blood and the rest of our bodies. So under the Paneth is another layer of cells called the lamina propria. In this lamina propria, there is circulation between your gut and the lymph nodes in your gut. We have lymph nodes all throughout our body, including in our gut. So in these lymph nodes and in this area is where the immune response begins in your body. Your small intestine has the largest mass of lymphoid or immune tissue in your entire body. There are lymphocytes there which work to attack and kill pathogens and in that way prevent you from getting ill. And that is where your immune system begins. So as you can see, the pathway for immune response in our small intestine is very, very complex. There's still a lot that's not known about it, but this is just to give you an idea of the many different layers of protection that our small intestine offers us from any kind of illness or pathogens. The brain releases different hormones, different cells, and has an interplay with your brain. So this might lead you to ask, if there's such an intricate immune system in place in our small intestine and these trillions of bacteria are working so hard for us, what causes things to go wrong and causes developmental delay and other things like autism and ADHD, ADD? Well, the answer, or the answer that some, including me, subscribe to is called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So these bacteria are great for us, for the most part. But what happens when there's an overgrowth of the bad bacteria in our guts? This is what happens.
Mommy.
Yes.
A high chair.
Okay, so now you're going to get to see what mom life is like over here. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is when those trillions of good bacteria, there's an imbalance. And that leads to things not functioning properly. They actually start destroying healthy brain cells. So you can see where that would be a big problem. So there have actually been studies in rats that have shown that this increase in propionic acid, which cause these microglial cells to be in a constant inflammatory state and release other toxic cytotoxins is what they're called, has been shown to increase antisocial, repetitive behaviors in rats and autistic-like symptoms. So that is pretty huge when you can show that a constant inflammatory state in the brain leads to autistic-like symptoms such as repetitive behaviors, antisocial behaviors in rats, and even seizures is what they found. This SIBO, or this chronic overgrowth in bacteria in your small intestine, what happens is it starts to degrade that permeable layer between your small intestine and your body. And as a result, things start leaking out from your small intestine into your body. Pathogens, for instance. And that is where the term leaky gut comes from, that you hear everywhere. So leaky gut because it's able to permeate from your small intestine into your body. And these are things we don't want in our body. These are things that, even if they're not harmful, produce an immune response from our body, which puts our body in this constant fight or flight feeling. And obviously, it's not good for your body to be in this constant inflammatory immune response state. Now, another insidious thing about leaky gut is you might think that it's circumscribed and it stays just in your gut. So when everything leaks out into your body, it goes into your bloodstream, throughout your body, and even to your brain. And that's where that two-way street is actually kind of a double-edged sword for us. So what happens is something called microglial activation. So leaky gut, these things are expelled into our body, into our bloodstream, reach our brain, and cause an immune response through microglial activation. Like I said, microglia are our immune cells in our brain. So our central nervous system immune system is comprised of these microglial cells, among other things. Now, what happens with leaky gut is, like I said, there is a microglial activation. Microglial cells tend to kill damaged brain cells. So they sound like they're a good thing, but they're not. What happens with leaky gut is that it causes a chronic state of microglial activation. So this is a chronic inflammatory state that your brain is in. So these microglial cells, they start to just destroy even healthy brain cells, and that clearly is a problem. Chronic activation of microglial cells can cause neuronal damage. They will start to release cytokines, which are toxic substances for our brain. So I'm going to be discussing, among other things, the Nemechek protocol, which is the protocol that I've been doing with my son. And it is created by Dr. Nemechek. He's a doctor out in Arizona, and I'll be talking about that in the next blog post. But I wanted to address one of the things that Dr. Nemechek says about propionic acid, and that is he believes it also creates a sedative effect on kids with developmental delay and autism. So when I say sedative effect, it kind of seems like they're in their own little world. They're really spacey, they're not always with it. So this propionic acid creates a sedative effect. So you might see a lot of kids with autism, developmental delay, and they're pretty chill, they're really laid back, very easy babies, very easy to deal with. And a lot of times when you start treating the gut, then the propionic acid goes away and you get some new symptoms and you're like, whoa, what happened? So the propionic acid, per Dr. Nemechek and per what I've seen with Nathaniel, and like I said, I'll discuss further, causes a sedative effect too, which masks a lot of the actual underlying other symptoms that your child may be experiencing too, which we had emerged, but like I said, I'll talk about that later. And this field is just so fascinating of gut health and autism and developmental delay. A 2017 study actually showed in children, they did a full microbiome transfer. So they did this transfer of a microbiome to these children, and they did this therapy for 8 weeks, I believe. And the children had a tremendous reduction in gastrointestinal symptoms. As you know, kids with autism, any developmental delays, they tend to have a lot of GI issues, whether it's diarrhea, constipation. And so in this study, it caused dramatic improvement in those GI symptoms. And it also caused a substantial improvement in autistic-like symptoms like repetitive behaviors and antisocial behaviors. And they actually found that those effects still remained 8 weeks after they stopped the therapy. So clearly, this is a hugely emerging field. Whereas before, they had been focusing on finding what this link was between the gut and the brain, what the interplay was. Now that they know that there is a huge link between our gut and our brain and our immune system, they're now starting to actually try to study the pathways between all these other illnesses and also developmental delay and autism. So there's going to be so many more studies treating autism symptoms and developmental delay through gut health in the future. So this is such an exciting field. The more I research, the more I read, the more I want to research and read, because it's just so fascinating. And this is not a gimmick. This is real science. This is real stuff. I'm not trying to sell you a product that I'm selling. I'm trying to sell you on the science behind this, and that you can heal your child. You can help symptoms that you're experiencing. There is no cure for any of this, obviously, but all you can do is treat symptoms. Much like in many disorders, autism is just a bunch of symptoms. A lot of developmental delays, same thing. It's a bunch of symptoms. And what do I mean by a bunch of symptoms? I mean, okay, your child's nonverbal, so your symptom is he's not talking. Your child is antisocial, so what's his symptom? He prefers objects to people. Okay, your kid is not with us, he's spacey. So these are symptoms that you treat. There's no one cure for anything, but by working on the gut, you can really get in there and start to make incredible progress and incredible changes in your child. Very tangible changes. So thank you for listening to my second blog post from Little Guts. The next one, like I said, I'm going to be discussing the actual supplements I used and the Nemechek protocol. Thank you so much for listening. And if you've got questions, I got answers. Thank you so much.